Marcus Blackwood sat in his home office, the office that used to be their office, exactly 18 hours after leaving Victoria at the hospital. Natasha was upstairs, redecorating the master bedroom, tossing out anything that reminded her of Victoria's presence. The sounds of drawers opening and closing, of garbage bags being filled, drifted down the stairs. He should have felt good. Victorious, even. Free. Instead, he felt a gnawing unease he couldn't name. The divorce papers sat on his desk, unsigned by Victoria, but already filed with the court. His attorney had assured him that didn't matter. California's no-fault laws meant the divorce would proceed regardless. Within 6 months, he'd be legally free to marry Natasha without any complications. He'd meant to throw out the box of Victoria's personal items that morning. The box he'd hastily packed from her bedside table, from the bathroom, from the small corner of the closet she'd claimed. But something had stopped him. Maybe guilt, though he'd never admit that to anyone. Maybe just the desire to make sure there was nothing in there that could be used against him in court. He opened the box. Prenatal vitamins. A worn copy of What to Expect When You're Expecting, with dozens of sticky notes marking pages. A small ultrasound photo showing 3 tiny shapes that Marcus had looked at exactly once before turning away. Hair ties, chapstick, a necklace from her mother, who died 2 years ago. And at the bottom, an unopened envelope. The paper was cream-colored, expensive. The return address made Marcus's stomach drop. Morrison and Associates. Attorneys at Law Estate Planning and Trust Management, San Francisco, CA. The postmark was from 3 weeks ago. Victoria had never opened it. Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he turned the envelope over. It was addressed to Victoria Marie Chen Blackwood in formal script. There was a red, urgent, time-sensitive materials enclosed. Stamp across the front, Chen, Victoria's maiden name, a name she rarely used anymore, except on legal documents. He shouldn't open it. It was addressed to her. But his curiosity and something else, something that felt like growing dread, made him slide his finger under the seal. Inside was a single sheet of letterhead and a business card. Dear Mrs. Blackwood, this letter serves as formal notification that you are the primary beneficiary of the estate of Margaret Lee Chen, deceased, your maternal grandmother. Due to the complex nature of this estate and the substantial assets involved, we require your immediate attention to finalize distribution proceedings. Per the terms of Ms. Chen's trust, full distribution cannot occur until specific conditions are met. You have met those conditions as of March 15th, 2025, date of your children's birth. Please contact our office immediately. This matter requires urgent attention and cannot be delayed. Sincerely, Robert Morrison, Senior Partner. Direct line, phone number. Marcus read it 3 times. Margaret Lee Chen, Victoria's grandmother. The woman had died 8 months ago, and Victoria had been devastated. She'd flown to San Francisco for the funeral while 6 months pregnant, against doctor's orders, because she'd loved her grandmother fiercely. Marcus had barely paid attention at the time. Old people died. That's what happened. He'd been busy with a major property acquisition and had skipped the funeral entirely, claiming work obligations. But now, substantial assets, complex estate, conditions met as of your children's birth. His phone was in his hand before he consciously decided to pick it up. He dialed the number on the letterhead. A receptionist answered on the second ring. Morrison and Associates, how may I direct your call? Yes, I'm calling about an estate notification. The estate of Margaret Lee Chen. My name is Marcus Blackwood, and... I'm sorry, sir, the receptionist interrupted smoothly. Are you Victoria Chen Blackwood? No, I'm her husband, ex-husband. We just divorced. A pause. I see. Sir, I can only discuss estate matters with the named beneficiary. If Mrs. Blackwood wishes to speak with us, she can call directly. I need to know about the estate. What's involved? How much? Sir, that information is confidential. I cannot share it with anyone except Mrs. Blackwood herself. Frustration surged through Marcus. I'm her husband. I have a right. You stated you were her ex-husband, sir, which means you have no legal standing regarding her private matters. Have a good day. The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone, his heart pounding. He opened his laptop and typed Margaret Lee Chen into Google. The first few results were obituaries. Standard, generic. But then, buried 6 pages deep, he found something that made his blood run cold. An archived article from the San Francisco Business Journal, dated 1997. Tech pioneer Chen Li walks away from fortune after family tragedy. Margaret Maggie Lee Chen, 48, co-founder and former CEO of Chen Technologies, has reportedly stepped down from all active roles in her company following the deaths of her husband and son in a car accident last month. Chen, whose company pioneered early semiconductor technology and holds patents worth an estimated $1.2 billion, has transferred all operational control to a private trust and will no longer participate in business decisions. She's devastated, said a close friend who spoke on condition of anonymity. She's lost everything that mattered to her. The money means nothing now. Chen Technologies, now operated by professional management, continues to generate substantial revenue from licensing agreements with major tech manufacturers. Industry analysts estimate the company's current value at approximately $1.8 billion. Marcus read the article 4 times, his hands shaking harder with each pass. $1.8 billion in 1997. 28 years ago. He did the math in his head, trying to calculate what that would be worth now with compound growth, with smart investments, with nearly 3 decades of patent royalties from semiconductor technology that was now in every device on Earth. He searched for more recent information, found mentions of Chen Technologies being acquired by a larger firm in 2015, found references to trust management companies handling substantial technology portfolios, found breadcrumbs that led to bigger breadcrumbs. Then he found something that made him stop breathing. A PDF of a government contract filing from 2 months ago. Public records, but buried so deep in bureaucratic documentation that only someone specifically searching would ever find it. Department of Defense, contract award. Notification, contract number W9111QX25D08 awarded to Chen Morrison Advanced Technologies Trust, contract value $18.7 billion over 7 years. Scope, development and implementation of next-generation satellite communication systems for military and civilian infrastructure. Primary contact, Victoria M. Chen, Trust Administrator and Technical Lead. Marcus's vision tunneled. $18.7 billion. Victoria's name. 2 months ago, when she'd been 7 months pregnant, exhausted, spending what he thought were lazy days at home because she was on bed rest. She hadn't been lazy. She'd been negotiating a $20 billion government contract, and he'd just divorced her, stolen her money, given her house to his mistress, and left her at a hospital with 3 newborn babies and nothing. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered without thinking. Hello? Mr. Blackwood? A woman's voice. Professional. Cold. This is Jennifer Watts from Morrison & Associates. I'm calling on behalf of Victoria Chen Blackwood. Marcus's mouth went dry. Yes? I'm calling to inform you that Mrs. Blackwood has retained our firm to handle her divorce proceedings. We'll be filing a motion to reopen the case you filed yesterday on grounds of fraudulent disclosure of assets. What are you? Additionally, we're filing criminal complaints for theft of marital assets, specifically the $43,000 you transferred from your joint account. Mrs. Blackwood has documentation of every deposit, every contribution. That money was largely hers. That's not. We're also filing for emergency custody modification. Mrs. Blackwood is the sole financial provider for your 3 children. You will be ordered to pay child support retroactive to their birth date. Marcus's mind raced. She has no money. She has nothing. Mr. Blackwood. The attorney's voice took on an edge of satisfaction. Mrs. Blackwood has access to resources you cannot imagine. I strongly suggest you hire an attorney. A very, very good one. You're going to need it. The line went dead. Marcus sat in the sudden silence of his home office, the letter still in his hand, the weight of what he'd done crushing down on him. Natasha appeared in the doorway, holding up paint swatches. Baby, should the bedroom be sage green or dusty blue? I can't decide which. She stopped, seeing his face. What's wrong? Marcus couldn't speak. He could only stare at the letter, at the Google search results still glowing on his laptop screen, at the reality of what he'd just destroyed. Upstairs, his phone buzzed with a text. His mother, Catherine. Mother. Did she sign the papers? He couldn't answer, because the truth was slowly, horrifyingly dawning on him. He hadn't divorced Victoria. He'd declared war on someone who'd just been handed $20 billion and every reason in the world to destroy him. Victoria Chen Blackwood sat in the cramped waiting room of New Beginnings Women's Shelter, holding Emma against her chest while Grace and Sophie slept in a donated double stroller beside her. It was 11 p.m. on her 3rd night here. 3 nights since she'd been discharged from the hospital with nowhere to go. The shelter was clean but overwhelmed. 23 women and 31 children currently in residence, all fleeing situations that had broken them in different ways. Victoria had been given a small room with 2 twin beds pushed together and exactly enough space for the stroller between the bed and the wall. Emma stirred, making the small mewling sound that meant she'd be hungry in about 10 minutes. Victoria automatically began preparing. She'd learned to anticipate their needs in the split seconds before they escalated to full cries. Her C-section incision still pulled with every movement, a constant reminder of how recent everything was. She'd cried for the first 48 hours, sobbed until she had no tears left, until her body was dehydrated and Nurse Helen had to force her to drink water. She'd cried while feeding the babies, while changing them, while watching them sleep with their tiny fingers curled into fists. But somewhere on the 3rd day, the tears had stopped. Not because the pain had lessened. If anything, it had intensified as the reality of her situation became clearer. But because she'd made a decision. Survive first. Process later. The babies needed her. That was all that mattered. A shelter volunteer named Maria approached, carrying a cardboard box. Victoria? This arrived for you. It was dropped off at the front desk. Victoria frowned. No one knew she was here except the hospital social worker who'd helped coordinate the placement. She set Emma carefully in the stroller and took the box. It was surprisingly heavy. And on top, there was an envelope. The same cream-colored envelope she vaguely remembered seeing in the stack of mail the week before the babies were born. The one she'd meant to open but kept putting off because prenatal appointments and false labor scares and preparing for 3 infants had consumed every moment. Her name was written in elegant script. Victoria Marie Chen Blackwood. She opened it with trembling hands. The letter was typed on thick stationery with a law firm's letterhead. Morrison and Associates. But there was also a handwritten note clipped to the top, and Victoria recognized the handwriting immediately. Her grandmother's. My dearest Victoria, If you're reading this, I'm gone. And I hope with everything in my heart that you never needed this letter. I hope you're happy, loved, supported. I hope the man you married treats you like the treasure you are. But I know the world. I know how quickly people can change when money and power are involved. I know because I lived it. Lost your grandfather and your uncle to people who saw dollar signs instead of souls. So I prepared. For 30 years, I prepared. In this box, you'll find a phone, fully charged, with a single number programmed, documents that explain everything, and keys to a safe deposit box at First National Bank in San Francisco. Box number 2847. My attorney, Robert Morrison, has instructions to meet you there whenever you're ready. Victoria, my darling girl, you are stronger than you know. You come from a line of women who built empires and raised children and survived wars. Your blood carries genius, resilience, and a stubbornness that once made your grandfather tell me I was too damn difficult for any man to handle. I told him that was exactly the point. Whatever has happened, whatever brought you to this letter, know that you're not alone. You were never alone. I've been planning for this moment since the day you were born. Call Robert. He knows everything. All my love, Nai. P.S. The conditions of the trust were specific. You receive full access when you have children of your own. I wanted to make sure my fortune went to someone who understood what truly matters. Not money. Family. Victoria's hands shook so badly, she nearly dropped the letter. She opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside was exactly what her grandmother had promised. A smartphone, brand new. Documents in protective folders, and a small key attached to a card with bank information. She pulled out the documents and began reading. The first was a summary from Morrison & Associates, dated 2 weeks after her grandmother's death. Beneficiary has been serving as technical lead. The government contract. The one she'd been working on for 18 months. The satellite communication project that had consumed her life during pregnancy. That had required countless video calls and technical reviews and presentations to Pentagon officials. She'd thought she was consulting for her grandmother's company. She'd thought she was helping manage a small tech firm during her grandmother's illness. She'd had no idea she was negotiating a $20 billion contract in her own name. Her vision blurred. She kept reading. The next document was her grandmother's journal, photocopied pages with handwritten notes. Victoria sat in that shelter waiting room, reading her dead grandmother's words, and felt something crack open in her chest. Not breaking, blooming. All those late-night video calls during pregnancy. All those technical reviews she'd led while on bed rest. All those Pentagon officials who'd asked increasingly complex questions that she'd answered with precision and confidence. That wasn't consulting work. That was her project, her contract, her $20 billion achievement. And she'd done it while 7, 8, 9 months pregnant with triplets, while Marcus was screwing his assistant and planning his escape. She picked up the phone her grandmother had left. There was indeed only one number programmed, a contact labeled simply R. Morrison. Call anytime. Victoria looked at the time, 11:47 p.m. She pressed dial. He answered on the first ring, his voice alert despite the late hour. Victoria? You were expecting my call. Her voice came out steadier than she'd expected. Your grandmother left instructions that I should be available 24/7 once you made contact. Where are you? New Beginnings Women's Shelter, downtown. A pause. I'm sending a car. It'll be there in 20 minutes. Pack whatever you have. You're coming to San Francisco tonight. I can't just... I have 3 babies. They're only a week old. I can't... Victoria. His voice was gentle but firm. "You're worth $2.8 billion. Your grandmother made sure of that. And more importantly, you've spent the last 18 months negotiating the largest Department of Defense technology contract in the past decade. You did that. You." The words hit her like electricity. "The car will have 3 infant car seats already installed, medical grade. There will be a neonatal nurse to help with the drive. And when you arrive, you'll have a full household staff, a night nurse, and every resource you need." Victoria looked down at her 3 sleeping daughters, at the donated clothes they wore, at the second-hand stroller that squeaked when it rolled. "Why didn't she tell me?" Victoria whispered. "Why didn't my grandmother tell me what I was building?" "Because she wanted you to discover your own power, not inherit hers." Morrison paused. "She left you a video message. You can watch it when you arrive. But Victoria, you need to understand something. Your soon-to-be ex-husband just declared war on one of the wealthiest women in California. He just humiliated and abandoned the woman who holds the keys to technology the Pentagon considers critical to national security." "He doesn't know," Victoria said quietly. "He knows now. He called my office 16 hours ago. He found the letter." Victoria's breath caught. And we told him nothing. But he's searching, digging. And by tomorrow morning, he'll have found enough to realize what he's done." A dark satisfaction bloomed in Victoria's chest. "Good. The car's on its way. Pack up. It's time to go home." "I don't have a home." "Yes, you do. Your grandmother's estate in Pacific Heights. 23 rooms, gardens, security. It's been waiting for you." Victoria hung up and sat in stunned silence. Maria, the shelter volunteer, approached quietly. "Everything okay?" Victoria looked up at her, at this kind woman who'd brought her donated diapers and shown her how to use the industrial washing machine for baby clothes. Who'd sat with her at 3 a.m. when all 3 babies were crying and Victoria had felt like she was drowning. "I need to go," Victoria said softly. "There's a car coming. But Maria, I'm going to do something about this place." "What do you mean?" "This shelter. How much would it cost to expand it? To hire more staff? To make sure no woman ever has to wait for a bed?" Maria's eyes widened. I don't know. Maybe $2 million for a new wing, another $1 million annually for operations?" Victoria smiled, a real smile, the first in days. "Consider it done." 20 minutes later, a black Mercedes SUV pulled up to the shelter. The driver stepped out, opened the back to reveal 3 top-of-the-line infant car seats, and a woman in scrubs appeared from the passenger seat. "Mrs. Blackwood? I'm Nurse Patricia. I'll be helping with the babies during the drive." Victoria carefully transferred each sleeping baby into their car seats. Emma, Grace, Sophie, her 3 tiny warriors. As the car pulled away from the shelter, heading north toward San Francisco and a life Victoria couldn't yet imagine, she pulled out her phone and did something she'd been too afraid to do before. She Googled herself. Victoria Chen Blackwood DoD contract. The results made her dizzy. Pentagon Awards, Historic 18.7B. Contract for Next Generation Satellite Network. Defense Technology Review, January 2025. Chen Technologies Trust wins major defense contract under new leadership. Federal Contracts, Weekly, February 2025. Rising Star, Victoria Chen's Technical Innovation. Impresses Pentagon officials. Government Technology Journal, December 2024. She'd been so focused on the day-to-day technical work, on managing the project requirements while pregnant, that she'd never looked at the broader context. She was headline news in the defense technology sector. She was the lead on a $20 billion project that the Pentagon had called critical infrastructure for the next generation of American defense. And she'd done it all while Marcus was planning his escape. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. "This is Jennifer Watts, your new attorney. Robert Morrison connected us. I've already filed motions to freeze all of Marcus Blackwood's accounts pending full disclosure of marital assets. We're also filing criminal complaints for theft. And Victoria? I'm going to enjoy destroying him. Welcome to the team." Victoria read the message 3 times, then she typed a response. Victoria: "How long until court?" Jennifer: "We can accelerate the timeline. 6 weeks if we push hard. Why?" Victoria: "He's getting married in 6 weeks. I want him to know what he's lost before he makes that mistake permanent." Jennifer: "Oh, I like you. Let's make this a show he'll never forget." In the front seat, Nurse Patricia was humming softly to the babies. The city lights streaked past the window as they crossed the Bay Bridge into San Francisco. Victoria looked at her 3 daughters, at these 3 tiny reasons her grandmother had structured the trust the way she had. You receive full access when you have children of your own. Because her grandmother had understood something fundamental. The fiercest warriors are the ones protecting someone they love. Marcus had handed her 3 reasons to fight, and $2.8 billion in weapons. Have you ever discovered you were powerful at the exact moment someone tried to destroy you? Victoria Chen. Blackwood closed her eyes and let herself imagine what would happen in 6 weeks. Let herself imagine walking into Marcus's wedding. Let herself imagine the look on his face when he realized what he'd thrown away. The car drove through the night, carrying her toward a future she'd built without knowing it, toward a power she had earned but never claimed. Until now. The Chen estate sat behind iron gates in Pacific Heights, one of San Francisco's most exclusive neighborhoods. Victoria had never been here. Her grandmother had lived simply after her husband and son died, in a modest apartment in Chinatown, where Victoria had visited throughout her childhood. This place was different. The car wound up a long driveway lined with ancient oak trees. Lights illuminated a 3-story Victorian mansion that looked like it belonged in a museum. Curved turrets, wraparound porches, stained glass windows that caught the pre-dawn light. Your grandmother bought this in 1998, Nurse Patricia said softly. She never lived here. She kept it for you. The front door opened before they'd even parked. A woman in her 60s stood backlit by warm interior light, her silver hair pulled back, her expression soft with welcome. Mrs. Blackwood? She said as Victoria carefully extracted herself from the car, still moving gingerly from the C-section. I'm Margaret Chen's estate manager, Helen Wu. I've been maintaining this house for 27 years, waiting for this day. Victoria stared at her. 27 years? Your grandmother bought this property the year you were born. She said, my granddaughter will need a home that reflects her strength, not my grief. So I've kept it ready. Tears pricked Victoria's eyes as Nurse Patricia and Helen began transferring the babies inside. Victoria followed on shaking legs. The interior was breathtaking. Hardwood floors gleamed. Crown molding traced elaborate patterns across high ceilings. But it wasn't cold or museum-like. It was warm. Lived in. As if someone had been preparing for a family to arrive. The nursery is on the 2nd floor, Helen said, leading them up a sweeping staircase. I updated it last month when we received word you were expecting. 3 cribs, changing station, everything you need. The nursery made Victoria's knees weak. It was perfect. Not ostentatious, not over the top, just perfect. 3 cribs arranged in a semicircle, each with soft bedding in pale greens and yellows. A comfortable rocking chair by the window. Shelves stocked with diapers, wipes, bottles, formula. Everything organized with the precision of someone who understood what new mothers needed. "There's a night nurse starting tomorrow," Helen continued, "and a day nurse. Your grandmother left detailed instructions about not letting you drown in early motherhood the way she did." Victoria sank into the rocking chair, watching as Nurse Patricia settled each baby into their cribs. They looked so small in this big room, in this enormous house. "I don't understand," Victoria whispered. "Why didn't she tell me? Why didn't she bring me here?" Helen sat on the ottoman across from her. "Because she wanted you to choose your own path, to build your own life. She said if she showed you all this too early, you might feel obligated to be someone you weren't ready to be." Helen smiled. She said, "Let her stumble and struggle and find her own strength. When she needs this, she'll know, and it'll be here." But she knew about Marcus. She knew he was... Victoria's voice broke. She suspected. She hoped she was wrong, but she prepared in case she was right. Helen pulled out an iPad and opened a video file. "She left this for you. She recorded it 3 days before she died." Victoria's breath caught as her grandmother's face filled the screen. Nai looked frail, her face hollowed by cancer, but her eyes were bright and fierce. She sat in what Victoria recognized as her hospital room, wearing a silk robe that somehow made her look regal despite the IV lines. "Victoria, my treasure," her grandmother began in Mandarin, then switched to English. "If you're watching this, then everything I feared has come true. And I'm so sorry. Sorry I'm not there to help you with your babies. Sorry you had to face betrayal when you should have been celebrated." Victoria's tears flowed freely. "But I'm not sorry I prepared. I spent 30 years building something for you. Not just money. Money is just a tool. I built you an empire, a foundation, a fortress." Her grandmother leaned forward, her voice taking on steel. "The Chen women survive. Your great-grandmother survived the Cultural Revolution. I survived losing everything I loved. And you, my brilliant girl, will survive this. You'll do more than survive. You'll thrive." The video showed her grandmother pulling out a stack of documents. "Everything you've been working on for the past 18 months? That Department of Defense contract? That was never consulting work, Victoria. That was your project. I put your name on the proposals. You led every negotiation. You designed the technical specifications. The Pentagon officials don't know me. They know you." Victoria's hands trembled. "I did that because I needed you to see your own brilliance before I told you about the money. I needed you to know you could build empires before you inherited mine." Her grandmother's eyes glistened. "And you did it. You built something extraordinary while carrying 3 babies, while dealing with a husband who couldn't see your light. When you're ready, and only when you're ready, I want you to do something for me. I want you to walk into whatever room holds the people who hurt you, and I want you to show them exactly what they lost." Her grandmother smiled, that fierce smile Victoria remembered from childhood. "Not for revenge. Revenge is exhausting. Do it for truth. Do it so they understand that underestimating women has consequences. Do it so every woman watching sees what happens when we stop apologizing for our power." The video showed her grandmother settling back against her pillows, suddenly looking very tired. "I love you, Victoria. I've loved you since the moment you were born, screaming so loudly the nurses laughed. "You've always been a fighter. Don't stop now." The Chen women don't break. We adapt, we strategize, and we win. The video ended. Victoria sat in the rocking chair in the nursery her grandmother had prepared 27 years ago, holding an iPad showing her grandmother's last message, and felt something fundamental shift inside her. Not grief. She'd have time for grief later. This was clarity. Her phone buzzed. A text from Robert Morrison. "Morrison, are you settled? I can be there in 30 minutes. We need to discuss strategy." Victoria: "Come now, I'm ready." Robert Morrison arrived exactly 28 minutes later. He was in his early 60s, with sharp eyes and the bearing of someone who'd spent decades in high-stakes negotiations. He carried a leather briefcase that looked like it cost more than Victoria's entire pre-shelter wardrobe. They sat in what Helen called the library, a 2-story room lined with books, with a fireplace crackling warmth into the pre-dawn chill. Morrison opened his briefcase with practiced efficiency. "I'm going to give you information quickly. Stop me if anything's unclear." He pulled out the first document. August 2024, first documented meeting, Hotel Bar, Airport Marriott. September 2024, weekly business dinners, begin October 2024. First hotel room booking, Victoria 6 months pregnant. November 2024, 8 separate hotel bookings. December 2024, 6 hotel bookings plus jewelry purchase for $200. January 2025, 5 hotel bookings. February 2025, 7 hotel bookings plus planning begins for divorce. March 2025, hospital confrontation, divorce papers served. 9 months, Victoria said clearly. Not a rebound after our marriage fell apart. Not something that happened because I let myself go. This started when I was 4 months pregnant with triplets, dealing with severe morning sickness on doctor-ordered bed rest. She projected hotel receipts, 16 separate bookings, each one showing Marcus's credit card. 16 hotels, approximately $8,000 in hotel charges. Plus dinners, flowers, jewelry. She zoomed in on one particular receipt. This one is my personal favorite. December 23rd, 2024. The night before Christmas Eve, I was 8 months pregnant, having contractions that turned out to be Braxton Hicks. I called Marcus, terrified I was going into early labor. She pulled up her phone records, showing the call. He told me he was working late, had a client emergency. Victoria's voice was acid. He was actually at the Ritz-Carlton with Natasha, spending $800 on room service and champagne. Guests gasped. Several women shook their heads in disgust. But it gets better, Victoria said, because this wasn't just an affair. It was coordinated, planned, orchestrated by multiple people who wanted me gone. Revelation number 4, the conspiracy. Victoria nodded to Jennifer, who pulled up a new document on screen. These are text messages between Marcus's mother, Catherine Blackwood, and Natasha Winters. They were obtained legally through discovery processes in our divorce proceedings. The messages filled the screen. Catherine, Sept. 2024. Has Marcus mentioned wanting out? Natasha. He says he feels trapped. That Victoria changed. Catherine. Good. Use that. Make him see what life could be like without her. Natasha. How? Catherine. Be everything she's not. Fit, energetic, exciting. Make him remember who he was before marriage. Catherine, Oct. 2024. Is he pulling away from her? Natasha. He barely talks to her. Says she's always tired and can't do anything fun. Catherine. Perfect. The pregnancy is the perfect time. She's unattractive, overwhelmed, vulnerable. He'll be more receptive to leaving, Catherine. Feb 2025. We need to act fast. Once the babies come, it gets complicated. Natasha. What's the plan? Catherine. Hospital. Day 3 or 4 after delivery. She'll be exhausted, in pain, not thinking clearly. We serve papers then. Maximum impact. Natasha. Brutal. Catherine. Necessary. She doesn't belong in this family. We're doing Marcus a favor. The room was completely silent, except for several people making sounds of disgust. Victoria let the messages sink in before continuing. They planned this for months. Catherine Blackwood, Victoria gestured to Marcus's mother, who'd gone white as paper, orchestrated every step. The timing, the hospital confrontation, everything designed to destroy me when I was most vulnerable. She pulled up another document. But Catherine did more than plan. She paid for it. The screen showed a bank transfer from Catherine Blackwood to Natasha Winters. Amount $15,000. Date February 14th, 2025. Memo. As discussed, for your help. $15,000, Victoria said flatly. Payment for services rendered. For seducing my husband. For helping destroy my marriage. For spitting in my face while I held my newborn daughter. She turned to face Catherine directly. You paid her to destroy me. You coordinated the attack. You timed it for maximum cruelty. And you did it all while calling yourself a grandmother to my daughters. Catherine stood, her face mottled with rage and humiliation. Those messages are private. Those messages are evidence, Jennifer Watts interrupted, standing. Evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud, theft, and emotional abuse. They're admissible in court, and we will be using them to pursue criminal charges. Criminal charges? Catherine's voice rose to a shriek. Yes, Jennifer said calmly. Conspiracy to commit theft of marital assets, fraud, potentially more. My firm specializes in these cases, Mrs. Blackwood. We're very, very good at them. Catherine sank back into her seat, her husband Harold looking shell-shocked beside her. Revelation number 5, the fake pregnancy. Victoria turned back to face Natasha, who'd been standing frozen at the altar, her wedding dress suddenly looking more like a costume. Natasha, there's something I need to ask you. In front of all these witnesses. Natasha's eyes were wide with panic. Are you pregnant? The question hung in the air. Natasha's mouth opened, closed, opened again. That's private. Medical information. Marcus told my daughters about their soon-to-be sibling, Victoria said. 2 weeks ago when he came to my house demanding to see them. He said, your baby brother or sister deserves to know you. So clearly it's not that private. She gestured to the screen, where Jennifer had pulled up a new document. This is an appointment confirmation from Bay Area Women's Health. It was accidentally sent to Marcus's email address, the one I still had access to before he changed the password. The screen showed, appointment confirmation. Patient, Natasha Winters. Date, July 5th, 2025. Procedure, surgical abortion consultation. Reason, elective termination, no current pregnancy. The room exploded. People weren't even trying to keep their voices down anymore. Several guests stood, looking at Natasha with undisguised shock and anger. No current pregnancy, Victoria repeated. That's what the doctor's notes say. You're not pregnant, Natasha. You never were. Natasha's face had gone scarlet. You hacked my medical records. The email was sent to Marcus's address, Jennifer corrected. Public domain once it's in his inbox. And it reveals something fascinating. You told Marcus you were pregnant to secure this marriage. but you were planning to fake a miscarriage on the honeymoon, keeping him guilty and obligated. Victoria stepped closer to Natasha, her voice dropping to something cold and dangerous. You lied about being pregnant to trap a man whose wife had just given birth to triplets. You used a fake baby as leverage while his real daughters, she gestured to the stroller, were lying in warming beds at the hospital, fighting to survive. Tears were streaming down Natasha's face, her makeup running, her perfect bridal facade crumbling. I wasn't trying to, she stammered. What were you trying to do? Victoria asked. Because from where I'm standing, you orchestrated a cruel, calculated attack on a new mother. You accepted payment from his mother to seduce him. You spat in my face. You lied about being pregnant. What exactly were your good intentions here? Natasha had no answer. Revelation number 6, the financial destruction. Victoria turned away from Natasha, letting her collapse into her mother's arms, and faced the broader audience. You might be wondering why I'm telling you all this. Why air this dirty laundry at their wedding? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Because I want everyone here to understand exactly who they're witnessing get married. And I want Marcus and Natasha to understand what their choices cost them. The screen shifted to Marcus's financial profile. 6 weeks ago, when Marcus kicked me out, his business was stable. He had his house. He had reliable income. He thought he was walking away from a burden and toward freedom. New information populated the screen. Marcus Blackwood, financial summary, current. Business status, Meridian Properties terminated contract, 40% revenue loss. House status, 4 months behind on mortgage, foreclosure proceedings initiated debt. $97,000, credit cards, personal loans, wedding expenses. Savings, 0. Monthly income, $7,200. Monthly expenses, $12,000. Marcus is drowning, Victoria said simply. His biggest client terminated their contract 4 days ago. That client represents 40% of his revenue. Without them, his business can't survive. She paused for effect. Want to know why they terminated? She smiled. Because Chen Capital Management, my family's investment firm, purchased 51% of Meridian Properties Group. And our first action as majority shareholders was restructuring their vendor relationships. Marcus was shaking his head, denial written across his features. I bought your biggest client, Victoria said clearly, and I fired you. The room murmured with a mixture of shock and admiration. His house, the one he kicked me out of, is 4 months behind on mortgage payments. The bank initiated foreclosure proceedings yesterday. He'll lose it within 60 days. She gestured to the elaborate decorations around them. This wedding cost approximately $180,000. Marcus borrowed $50,000. Maxed 3 credit cards for another $35,000. Drained his business account for $40,000. His parents contributed $30,000 they couldn't afford. And Natasha's mother was supposed to contribute $75,000. Victoria looked at Patricia Winters, who stood in the back of the room, her face stony. But Patricia withdrew that support 2 weeks ago, after she discovered what her daughter had done, after she saw the evidence of Natasha's cruelty. She gave me that evidence, by the way. Bank records, text messages, everything. Natasha turned to her mother, betrayal written across her tear-streaked face. Mom? Patricia didn't respond. So Marcus paid for this wedding with stolen money and borrowed funds he can't repay, Victoria continued. He's $97,000 in debt. His business is failing. His house is in foreclosure. And after today, his reputation will be completely destroyed. She looked at Marcus. You thought you were trading up. You thought you were leaving a fat, boring wife for something better. But what you actually did was throw away a fortune, destroy your career, and bankrupt yourself for a woman who was using you. Revelation number 7, the property irony. Oh, Victoria said, as if just remembering something. One more thing about this venue. The screen shifted to show property records. The Riverside Plaza, beautiful space. You chose well, Marcus. Great views, elegant design, perfect for a society wedding. New information appeared. Riverside Plaza ownership. Parent company, Morrison Hotel Group. Primary investor, Chen Family Trust, 68% controlling stake. Acquired, April 2025. Victoria smiled. I own this building. Well, my trust does. We acquired majority stake 5 weeks ago as part of a hotel portfolio expansion. Marcus's mouth fell open. So this $180,000 wedding you can't afford? You're paying me to host it. The venue fee goes directly to Chen Holdings, which will donate it to New Beginnings Women's Shelter. The shelter that took me in when you threw me out. The poetic justice of it was so perfect that several guests actually laughed. You're literally paying your ex-wife to watch you marry your mistress, Victoria said. I just want to make sure you appreciate the irony. Revelation number 8, the voicemails. Since we're being thorough, Victoria continued, let's talk about the past 6 weeks. What's Marcus been up to since discovering his mistake? The screen shifted to show a voicemail log. Voicemails from Marcus Blackwood to Victoria Chen. March 19th, 4. Voicemails. March 20th, 7 voicemails. March 21st, 11 voicemails. March 22, 6 voicemails. Total messages, 47 voicemails over 14 days. 47 voicemails, Victoria said. Begging, apologizing, trying to explain, trying to see the babies, trying to negotiate. She pulled up audio, played several clips. Marcus's voice, desperate. Victoria, please call me back. I know I made mistakes, but we need to talk about the girls. They need their father. Please. Another. I saw the article about the defense contract. Why didn't you tell me? This changes everything. We should discuss. Another. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking clearly. Natasha, it was a mistake. All of it. Can we please just talk? Victoria stopped the playback. Notice the progression. First, it's about the babies. Then it's about the money. Then it's apologies. He cycled through every manipulation technique, trying to find one that would work. She looked at Marcus. But here's what you didn't understand. I wasn't ignoring you because I was hurt or because I needed time. I was ignoring you because you no longer mattered. You made yourself irrelevant, and no amount of begging would change that. Revelation number 9, the legal consequences. Jennifer Watts stepped forward, taking over. As Mrs. Chen's attorney, I want to make sure everyone understands the legal ramifications of what's been discussed today. She pulled up a list on screen. Pending legal actions. Criminal complaint against Marcus Blackwood. Theft of marital assets. Criminal complaint against Catherine Blackwood. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Criminal complaint against Natasha Winters. Battery. Spitting incident. Civil lawsuit against Marcus Blackwood. Divorce fraud. Hidden assets. Civil lawsuit against Catherine Blackwood. Emotional distress. Conspiracy. Emergency custody motion. Full custody to Victoria Chen with supervised visitation only. Child support motion. Retroactive to birth date. $12,000 month per child. All of these have been filed, Jennifer said. All of them are proceeding. And based on the evidence we've presented today, much of which is now on camera, we expect favorable outcomes on all counts. She looked at Catherine specifically. Mrs. Blackwood, you should also know that the IRS has been investigating your charity foundation for tax fraud. That investigation concludes next week. Based on preliminary findings, you'll likely face federal charges. Catherine made a small sound, like all the air had left her body. Jennifer continued. Marcus, you'll be required to pay child support for 3 children. Based on imputed income calculations, meaning what you should be earning, not what you're currently earning, that's approximately $36,000 per month. Given your current financial status, you'll be in arrears immediately. Marcus's best man whispered something urgent in his ear. Marcus shook his head, looking dazed. And Natasha, Jennifer said, turning to the bride, the battery charge for spitting on Mrs. Chen carries potential jail time. It's considered assault in California. Combined with the evidence of conspiracy, you're looking at criminal prosecution. Jennifer stepped back, letting the weight of those consequences settle. Revelation number 10. The personal devastation. Victoria moved to center stage one final time. I want to be very clear about something, she said, her voice softer now but still carrying to every corner of the room. This isn't about revenge. Revenge would be petty. Revenge would be destructive for destruction's sake. She gestured to her daughters in their stroller. This is about accountability. This is about showing my daughters that when people hurt you, there are consequences. That being vulnerable doesn't mean being powerless. That women don't have to smile and accept abuse because it's more comfortable for everyone else. She looked at the audience. Every person in this room needs to understand what happened here. Marcus didn't just divorce me. He orchestrated, with his mother and his mistress, a calculated attack designed to destroy me at my most vulnerable moment. He stole my money. He took my home. He abandoned his premature daughters. And he laughed about it. Her voice strengthened. But what he failed to understand is that my grandmother prepared for exactly this scenario. She'd seen men underestimate women her entire life. So she built a fortress around me. She made sure that if anyone tried to destroy me, I'd have every resource I needed to not just survive, but to thrive. Victoria walked back to the stroller, placed a hand on the handle. Emma, Grace, and Sophie will grow up knowing their mother didn't break. They'll know that when the world tried to crush her, she stood up and fought back. Not with violence, not with cruelty, but with truth. She looked at Marcus one final time. You thought I was weak because I'd gained weight, because I was tired, because I was focused on our children instead of looking attractive for you. Her voice was ice, but you never asked why I was tired, never questioned what I was working on during all those late nights, never cared enough to see past your own shallow assessment. If you had asked, just once, what I was doing, I would have told you about the defense contract, about the Pentagon briefings, about the technical innovations I was pioneering. But you never asked, because you'd already decided I wasn't worth your attention. She paused, letting that sink in. So here's what you need to understand, Marcus. You didn't leave me because I wasn't enough. You left because you weren't enough to see what I was. The room was utterly silent. I don't need an apology, Victoria continued. I don't need you to understand what you lost. I don't need closure or healing or any therapeutic concept that suggests I'm still broken. She smiled, a real smile full of genuine peace. I'm not broken. I was never broken. I was just momentarily knocked down by people who mistook kindness for weakness. She looked at the assembled guests. Thank you all for attending today. I'm sure you came expecting a beautiful wedding. Instead, you witnessed something more important. A woman reclaiming her power. Use that however you need to in your own lives. Victoria turned to the officiant, who'd been standing frozen this entire time. I believe my objection has been heard. You may proceed with the ceremony if the bride and groom still wish to marry, though I suspect they have some things to discuss first. She began walking toward the exit, Robert Morrison and Jennifer Watts flanking her, Patricia pushing the stroller with the babies. Behind her, the ballroom erupted into chaos. The moment Victoria stepped into the aisle to leave, everything exploded at once. Natasha let out a sound between a sob and a scream and ran. Not toward Marcus, but toward the exit, her cathedral train dragging behind her. Her maid of honor tried to grab her arm, but Natasha shook her off and fled, mascara streaming down her face. Marcus stood at the altar, his mouth opening and closing silently, his best man gripping his shoulder to keep him upright. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 20 minutes. Catherine Blackwood was screaming at someone. Maybe her husband, maybe the universe. Her carefully constructed society matriarch persona had shattered completely. This is slander. We'll sue. Mrs. Blackwood. Robert Morrison turned back calmly. Everything presented today is documented, verified, and legally admissible. If you'd like to sue, please feel free. It'll just give us another forum to present this evidence. Harold Blackwood was pulling his wife toward the exit, his face gray with shock and what looked like the dawning realization that their lives were about to be destroyed. Guests weren't even pretending to be polite anymore. They were on their phones, texting frantically, taking photos, some even filming. The documentary crew captured everything. The chaos, the disbelief, the spectacular collapse of what was supposed to be a celebration. Patricia Winters stood near the back, tears streaming down her face, but she was nodding with something like grim satisfaction. She caught Victoria's eye and mouthed, "Thank you." Victoria nodded back. Patricia had lost her daughter to this mess, but she'd chosen truth over family loyalty. That took courage Victoria respected deeply. As Victoria's group moved toward the exit, a reporter from the San Francisco Chronicle, one of the ones Robert had arranged to attend, stepped forward. "Dr. Chen, can I ask you a few questions?" "Not today," Victoria said pleasantly but firmly. "But if you'd like to schedule an interview next week, my office will accommodate you." She handed him a business card, her official one, listing her title as Principal Architect, Harlantian Initiative. Outside the venue, the late afternoon sun was still bright. The bay sparkled. It was beautiful in a way that felt almost mocking. Such a perfect day for such a spectacular disaster. Victoria's Mercedes was waiting. Patricia, the nurse, carefully loaded the triplets into their car seats. All 3 babies had slept through the entire confrontation, blissfully unaware that their mother had just decimated their father's entire life. As Victoria slid into the back seat, she felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, no regret, just profound exhaustion. "You did it," Jennifer said quietly from the seat beside her. "You actually did it." "We did it," Victoria corrected. "This was a team effort." "The media is going to be insane," Robert warned from the front passenger seat. "This story has everything. Betrayal, hidden wealth, defense contracts, conspiracy. Every outlet in the country will want a piece." "Then we control the narrative," Victoria said. "I'll do exactly 3 interviews. 60 Minutes, the New York Times, and 1 tech industry publication. That's it. Everything else goes through you, Robert." He nodded approvingly. "Smart. Control the story before it controls you." Victoria's phone started buzzing, text messages flooding in. She glanced at the screen. Most were from numbers she didn't recognize. A few were from colleagues in the defense industry, probably having seen the news already spreading on social media. One message stood out. From Marcus. Marcus, please, can we talk? Not about the money, not about any of that. About the girls. They're my daughters. Please. Victoria stared at the message for a long moment, then showed it to Jennifer. What do you think? Victoria asked. I think he had 7 weeks to care about his daughters. He chose not to. Jennifer's voice was hard. But legally, he does have parental rights. At minimum, supervised visitation. He doesn't deserve them. No. But they might deserve the chance to know their father, even if he's a disaster. When they're older. When they can understand. Jennifer paused, but that's years away. Right now, he's shown he's unstable, financially devastated, and potentially dangerous. We push for supervised visitation only, maximum 2 hours per week at a neutral location. Victoria nodded slowly. And if he fights it? We show the judge everything we showed that room today. No judge will grant custody to a man who abandoned infants in a hospital. Victoria deleted Marcus's message without responding. The car wound through San Francisco streets, heading back to Pacific Heights. Back to the estate that was Victoria's fortress, her sanctuary, her empire's headquarters. As they pulled through the iron gates, Helen Wu was waiting at the front door, her face carefully neutral, but her eyes glimmering with something that might have been pride. How did it go? Helen asked as Victoria climbed out, accepting Sophie's car seat from Patricia. Exactly as planned, Victoria said. Maybe better. Good, Helen smiled. Then perhaps you're ready to watch your grandmother's second video, the one she recorded for after your victory. Victoria paused. There's a second video? She made 3, one for the discovery, one for the aftermath, one for 5 years from now. Helen gestured toward the house. She said you'd know when you were ready for each one. Inside, after the babies were settled and the nurses had taken over their care, Victoria sat in the library with Robert, Jennifer, and Helen. The tablet was already queued up to her grandmother's second message. Her grandmother appeared on screen, looking slightly better than in the first video. This one had been recorded earlier in her illness, before the cancer had ravaged her so completely. Victoria, her grandmother began, if you're watching this, you've won. Not the war. Men like him will always exist. But this battle, you've shown them what the Chen women are made of. Her grandmother's smile was fierce and proud. Now comes the hard part. Not destroying them. That was easy, wasn't it? You had resources and evidence and truth on your side. The hard part is building what comes next. Not just rebuilding your life, but building something bigger. Something that matters. She leaned forward, her eyes intense even through the screen. You have $3 billion, Victoria. You have a Pentagon contract. You have 3 daughters who will watch everything you do and learn how to be women from your example. So what are you going to build? Victoria felt tears forming. I built my fortune, her grandmother continued. But I didn't do much with it except protect it and pass it to you. I was too traumatized by loss, too afraid to be visible again. But you're not afraid anymore. You've faced the worst and survived. So use it. Build hospitals, fund research, create opportunities for women in STEM. Make sure no woman ever has to stand in a shelter with newborn babies and wonder how she'll survive. Her grandmother's voice softened. But also, be happy. Date when you're ready. Laugh. Take your daughters to parks and museums and beaches. Let them see you as a whole person, not just a warrior. Because being powerful doesn't mean being hard all the time. She paused. I loved you from the moment you were born, Victoria. And I'm so proud of who you became. Not because of the money or the success, but because when the world tried to break you, you chose to build instead of destroy. That's real power. That's the Chen legacy. The video ended. Victoria sat in silence, tears streaming down her face, feeling the weight of her grandmother's words settle into her bones. What do you want to do? Robert asked quietly. Victoria wiped her eyes and looked up at her team. Robert, who'd managed her grandmother's empire for decades. Jennifer, who'd fought for her with the ferocity of a lioness. Helen, who'd maintained a house for 27 years, waiting for this moment. I want to do exactly what she said, Victoria replied, her voice steady despite the tears. I want to build something that matters. She stood, walking to the windows that overlooked San Francisco's lights, beginning to glow in the approaching evening. Tomorrow, we start the Chen Foundation, $50 million initial endowment. Focus on women's shelters, STEM education for girls, and support for single mothers. I want to make sure no woman experiences what I experienced, being powerless with nowhere to turn. Robert was already making notes. And I want to buy Marcus's house before the bank forecloses, Victoria continued. Not to live in. I never want to see that place again. But I want to donate it to New Beginnings as their new headquarters. 3 stories, 6 bedrooms. It's perfect for expanding their capacity. Jennifer smiled. That's beautifully petty. That's beautifully strategic, Victoria corrected. Marcus gets to watch his house become a shelter. The place where he kicked out a new mother becomes the place where other new mothers find safety. That's not revenge. That's poetry. She turned back to face them. What about media? Robert asked. 60 Minutes first, full interview. I tell everything. Then the New York Times profile piece. Then one tech industry publication, probably Defense Technology Review since they've been following the contract. When? Next month. Give the story time to spread organically first. Let people talk. Let Marcus and Catherine deal with the immediate fallout. Then I control the narrative with official interviews. Victoria pulled out her phone and opened social media. Something she'd been avoiding. The wedding hashtag Marcus and Natasha had created, hashtag Blackwood Wedding Bliss, was trending. But not with congratulations. With screenshots, videos, and shocked commentary about the public exposure. One tweet had 89,000 retweets. Holy shit, just watched a billionaire defense contractor destroy her ex-husband at his wedding with receipts. She brought the babies. This is the most epic revenge story I've ever seen. Hashtag Blackwood Wedding Bliss. Another. The way she walked in with 3 newborns, $3 billion, and a Pentagon contract, then systematically exposed everyone involved in her abuse. Chef's kiss. This is how you do accountability. Chajan Blackwood Wedding Bliss. A third. Can we talk about how she bought his biggest client just to fire him? And she owns the wedding venue? This woman is playing 4D chess while he's playing checkers. Dutch Blackwood Wedding Bliss. Victoria closed her phone. It's everywhere already, she said quietly. Of course it is, Jennifer replied. You gave the internet exactly what it loves. A powerful woman destroying men who underestimated her. This story will define you for years. I know. Victoria took a breath. That's why we need to control it. Make sure the focus stays on accountability and consequences, not just revenge. I want other women to see this and know they can fight back. That vulnerability doesn't mean powerless. They will, Helen said firmly. You've shown them how. Upstairs, one of the babies started crying. Emma, by the sound of it. Victoria excused herself and went to the nursery. Emma was awake, fussing, her tiny face scrunched with indignation. Victoria picked her up carefully, settled into the rocking chair, and began feeding her. Sophie and Grace slept peacefully in their cribs. 3 perfect girls who would grow up knowing their mother was strong, that she'd faced the worst and emerged victorious, that the Chen women didn't break, they built. As Victoria rocked Emma in the quiet nursery, the full weight of what she'd done finally hit her. She'd walked into Marcus's wedding, 7 weeks after he'd thrown her out with nothing, and systematically destroyed him with nothing but truth. She'd exposed his theft, his conspiracy, his mother's involvement, his mistress's lies. She'd proven her worth not by defending herself, but by simply presenting facts. She'd shown 200 witnesses that underestimating women had real, devastating consequences. And she'd done it all while holding her head high, her voice steady, her power absolute. Emma finished eating and drifted back to sleep. Victoria placed her in the crib and stood there watching her 3 daughters breathe. Your father made a choice, she whispered to them. He chose cruelty over kindness, destruction over support, a lie over truth. And he'll live with those consequences for the rest of his life. She adjusted Emma's blanket. But you'll grow up with every advantage I can give you, every opportunity, every resource, and you'll know that your mother fought for you when you couldn't fight for yourselves. Victoria kissed each baby's forehead and left the nursery, leaving the door cracked so she could hear them if they cried. Downstairs, Robert and Jennifer were preparing to leave. The media requests are already flooding in, Robert warned. My office has received 47 calls in the past hour. Route them all through your assistant. Standard response. Dr. Chen will be making a statement next month through selected media partners. And Marcus? Jennifer asked. When he calls, and he will, what do you want me to tell him? Victoria considered. Tell him all communication must go through you. Tell him we'll discuss supervised visitation only after he completes parenting classes and a psychological evaluation. Tell him if he contacts me directly again, we'll file for a restraining order. Done. They left, taking the chaos of the day with them. Helen appeared with tea. Chamomile, the way Victoria's grandmother used to make it. You should rest, Helen said gently. Today was exhausting, even if you don't feel it yet. I don't feel exhausted, Victoria admitted. I feel clear, like I can finally breathe properly for the first time in years. That's what truth does, Helen said. It clears the air. Victoria sipped her tea and looked around the library, the room where she'd planned this entire operation, where she'd studied evidence and rehearsed her statements and prepared to face her demons. My grandmother asked what I was going to build, Victoria said quietly. I think I'm starting to know. Tell me. An empire, not just a financial one. She already built that. But something that changes how we think about power, about motherhood, about what women can accomplish when they stop apologizing for taking up space. Victoria set down her tea. The Chen Foundation will be the start. Then I want to expand the Harlingen Initiative beyond defense. Use that technology to bring internet access to rural communities, to schools, to places where lack of connectivity means lack of opportunity. Her voice strengthened as the vision crystallized. I want to create incubators for women-led startups. Fund research by female scientists. build networks that support and amplify women's voices in tech and business, and every field where we've been told we don't belong. And I want my daughters to grow up seeing all of it. Seeing that their mother didn't just survive. She transformed pain into purpose. Took everything meant to destroy her and built something that lifts others up. Helen's eyes glistened. Your grandmother would be so proud. I hope so. Victoria smiled, because now I understand what she was teaching me all along. It's not about the money. It never was. It's about using resources to create change, to protect people who need protecting, to make sure no woman stands alone when the world tries to break her. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Victoria asked the question that had been hovering at the edge of her consciousness. Do you think I was too harsh? No, Helen said immediately. You were honest. You presented facts. If the facts were harsh, that's because his actions were harsh. But his life is destroyed now. His life is changed now, Helen corrected. Destroyed implies it can't be rebuilt. He's still alive, still capable of learning and growing. Whether he chooses to do that is up to him. Victoria nodded slowly, accepting that. And Natasha? Facing consequences for her choices, as she should be. And Catherine? Will probably go to prison for fraud. Helen's voice was matter-of-fact. She earned that. Victoria stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow the story would be everywhere. News outlets, social media, think pieces about betrayal and revenge and women's empowerment. Marcus and Natasha would be villains in a narrative they couldn't control. Catherine would face federal charges. And Victoria? Victoria would be the woman who proved that vulnerability and power weren't opposites. That motherhood didn't mean weakness. That being underestimated was sometimes the greatest advantage. She pulled out her phone and looked at one final text. From Patricia Winters. Patricia, thank you for showing my daughter that actions have consequences. I failed to teach her that. Maybe losing everything will finally make it sink in. I'm sorry for what she did to you. You deserved so much better. Victoria typed back, Victoria, your courage today helped more than you know. Thank you for choosing truth over family loyalty. That couldn't have been easy. Patricia, nothing worth doing ever is. Good luck with everything, Victoria. You're going to change the world. Victoria set her phone down and returned to the nursery to check on her daughters one more time. They slept peacefully, unaware of the war that had been waged on their behalf. Unaware that their mother had walked into enemy territory wearing armor made of truth and diamonds and emerged victorious. Emma stirred slightly, made a small sound, then settled back into sleep. I love you, Victoria whispered to all three of them. And I promise you'll grow up knowing your worth, knowing your power, knowing that the Chen women don't break. She adjusted Sophie's blanket one more time, then returned to her own room. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, media scrutiny, legal battles, the complicated work of building an empire while raising 3 infants. But tonight, Victoria Chen Blackwood, billionaire heiress, defense technology pioneer, mother of triplets, and the woman who just delivered the most spectacular public reckoning in San Francisco's recent history, allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. Pure, hard-earned, well-deserved peace. September arrived with fog rolling through San Francisco's streets, blanketing the city in the cool dampness that marked summer's end. Victoria Chen stood in the newly christened Chen Foundation headquarters. Ironically, Marcus's former house, which she'd purchased at foreclosure auction for $1.2 million and donated to New Beginnings Women's Shelter. The transformation was complete. Where Marcus's home office had been, there was now an intake coordination center. The master bedroom, where he'd slept with Natasha, was now a counseling suite. The living room, where he'd served Victoria divorce papers, was a child care center where mothers could leave their children while they worked with case managers. Poetic justice at its finest. "Dr. Chen?" A young woman approached. Sarah Martinez, the foundation's executive director. "The 60 Minutes crew is here for the walkthrough." Victoria nodded. This was the final interview of her carefully controlled media strategy. 60 Minutes would air on Sunday. The New York Times profile had published 2 weeks ago, generating 3.2 million online views. Defense Technology Review had done a cover story titled "The Woman Who Changed Pentagon Procurement Forever." Every piece had controlled the narrative exactly as she'd intended. Not a revenge story, but an accountability story. Not about destroying a man, but about a woman discovering her own power. The interviewer, Rebecca Morrison, no relation to Robert, was a veteran journalist known for tough but fair questioning. She'd covered everyone from presidents to CEOs. "Dr. Chen, thank you for making time for us." "Of course." Victoria shook her hand. "Where would you like to start?" They filmed the shelter first. Mothers with small children, case managers helping with job applications, children laughing in the play area. Then they moved to the conference room that had once been Marcus's dining room. Rebecca settled into her chair, camera rolling, and began. "3 months ago, you walked into your ex-husband's wedding and exposed what many are calling one of the most calculated conspiracies of spousal abuse in recent history. How do you feel about that description?" Victoria considered her words carefully. "I don't think about it in terms of my feelings. I think about it in terms of patterns. Marcus's treatment of me wasn't unique or special. Women experience this every day, being told they're not enough, being abandoned when vulnerable, being blamed for their abuser's choices. The only difference is I had resources to fight back. Resources being $3 billion and a Pentagon contract," Victoria said dryly. "That helps." Rebecca smiled slightly. "Let's talk about that. You negotiated an $18.7 billion defense contract while pregnant with triplets. But you've said you didn't even realize the full scope of what you were building?" "I knew it was significant. But I didn't understand it was mine. That I was the principal architect, that my name was on everything. I thought I was consulting for my grandmother's company." Victoria shook her head. "My grandmother structured it that way deliberately. She wanted me to discover my own capabilities before I discovered the wealth backing them." "Why?" "Because she understood something fundamental. If I'd known about the billions first, I might have doubted whether my Pentagon success was real or just money-buying influence. But I earned that contract based purely on technical merit. The wealth was protection, not the foundation." Rebecca leaned forward. "Some critics have said your wedding confrontation was excessive, that you could have handled this privately through courts." "I could have," Victoria agreed. "But that would have protected Marcus and his family's reputation. It would have kept their actions private while I dealt with public judgment as the bitter ex-wife. I wanted everyone to see exactly what they'd done and why it was wrong." "Do you regret the public nature of it?" "No." Victoria's voice was firm. "Because within a week of that wedding, I had 3,000 messages from women sharing their own stories of abandonment during vulnerability, of being left while pregnant, or after childbirth, or during illness, of having their finances stolen, their reputations destroyed, their worth questioned." She pulled out her phone, showed a folder of saved messages. "This one is from a woman whose husband left her 2 weeks after her cancer diagnosis. This one is from a woman who was abandoned with 5 children under 6 years old. This one is from a woman whose in-laws conspired to take her children away while she was in psychiatric care for postpartum depression. Victoria looked directly at the camera. If my story helps even one woman understand she's not alone, that she's not crazy, that abuse is abuse, even when it comes from good families in expensive clothes, then the public nature of it was worth every uncomfortable minute. Rebecca nodded slowly. Let's talk about your daughters. Emma, Grace, and Sophie are now 4 months old. How are you managing motherhood alongside building an empire? Victoria smiled, her first real smile of the interview. With help. Lots of help. I have 2 full-time nurses, a household staff, and a support network my grandmother built over decades. I'm extraordinarily privileged in that regard. But the emotional weight is significant, Victoria interrupted gently. Being a single mother to triplets while managing a Pentagon contract and launching a foundation? It's overwhelming most days. There are nights when all 3 babies are crying and I'm running on 3 hours of sleep. And I wonder how I'm going to survive the next week. But then I remember I've already survived the worst. Marcus took everything he could possibly take from me. And I not only survived, I thrived. So diaper blowouts at 3 a.m., teething, sleepless nights, those are manageable compared to being homeless with newborn triplets. Rebecca shifted topics. Marcus Blackwood. Have you had any contact with him since the wedding? Victoria's expression went carefully neutral. Through attorneys only. We're in ongoing litigation regarding custody, child support, and the theft of marital assets. What's the current status? Marcus has supervised visitation twice a month for 2 hours each session. He must complete parenting classes and maintain employment. Child support is set at $36,000 monthly for all 3 girls, though he's currently 4 months in arrears because he can't afford it. Some people say that amount is excessive. It's based on imputed income, Victoria explained. What he should be earning based on his education and experience, not his current situation. The court views his financial collapse as a consequence of his own choices, not a reason to reduce his obligations to his children. Is he working now? Part-time consulting. He lost his real estate firm entirely. His house was foreclosed. I bought it at auction and donated it to become this shelter. His parents won't help him financially because they're dealing with their own legal issues. Your former mother-in-law, Catherine Blackwood, is facing federal charges. Tax fraud and embezzlement from her charity foundation. The trial starts next month. She's looking at 5 to 8 years if convicted. Rebecca paused. Does that give you satisfaction? Victoria considered the question seriously. No. It gives me completion. She conspired to destroy me at my most vulnerable. Now she's facing consequences. That's not satisfaction. That's justice. And Natasha Winters? Pleaded guilty to battery charges. She received 2 years probation, community service, and mandatory counseling. Her mother, Patricia Winters, has been instrumental in ensuring Natasha faces accountability while getting the help she needs. Patricia testified against her own daughter in your civil cases. Yes, that took extraordinary courage. Patricia chose truth over family loyalty, and I respect that deeply. Rebecca looked at her notes. The New York Times called you the face of a new kind of feminism, one that wields power without apology. Do you agree with that characterization? Victoria smiled slightly. I think I'm the face of what happens when women stop apologizing for existing. We've been socialized to make ourselves smaller, to accommodate, to prioritize everyone else's comfort over our own dignity. And when we stop doing that, when we take up space and demand accountability, that's threatening to power structures built on our compliance. Your grandmother seemed to understand that. My grandmother lived it. She lost everything to tragedy, then rebuilt a fortune while living in a modest apartment because she understood that being underestimated was protection. But she raised me to be visible, to use the resources she'd built to create change. The Chen Foundation has already donated $50 million in its first 3 months. What's the goal? Victoria's eyes lit up. This was clearly her passion. We're focusing on 3 areas: women's shelters and support services, STEM education for girls, and economic opportunities for single mothers. Within 5 years, I want to fund 200 shelters nationwide. Within 10 years, I want to see measurable increases in women entering tech fields. That's ambitious. It's necessary. Victoria leaned forward. Every woman who stays in an abusive relationship because she can't afford to leave. Every girl who doesn't pursue engineering because she thinks it's not for her. Every mother who can't feed her children while working 2 jobs. Those are failures of our system. The Chen Foundation exists to fix those failures. Rebecca smiled. You sound like someone planning to change the world. I'm someone with the resources to actually do it. So yes, I'm going to try. They filmed for another hour. Victoria showing her daughter's nursery, cameras allowed only with privacy protections, discussing the Harlingen Initiative's progress, talking about her plans for the future. Finally, Rebecca asked her closing question. If Marcus Blackwood were watching this interview, what would you want him to know? Victoria looked directly at the camera. I'd want him to know that this was never about him. It was never about destroying him or getting revenge or proving I was better. It was about showing my daughters and every woman watching that vulnerability doesn't mean powerless. She paused. Marcus made choices. Those choices had consequences. He can spend the rest of his life bitter about those consequences, or he can learn from them and become someone better. That's entirely up to him. But as for me, I'm done looking backward. I have 3 daughters to raise, an empire to build, and a world to change. Marcus Blackwood is simply no longer relevant to any of that. The interview ended. June 20th, 2026, exactly 1 year after the wedding that broke the internet. Victoria Chen stood in the ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton San Francisco, surrounded by 500 guests at the Chen Foundation's first annual gala. The event had sold out in 72 hours. Tickets ranged from $10,000 to $100,000, with every penny going to fund shelter expansions and STEM programs. Emma, Grace, and Sophie, now 15 months old, were home with their nurses, probably destroying something while learning to walk. Victoria smiled thinking about them. The past year had been transformative. The Harlingen Initiative had launched successfully. First satellites deployed, Pentagon officials thrilled with progress. Victoria's reputation as a defense technology innovator cemented. The Chen Foundation had funded 47 shelters in 12 states, provided scholarships to 2,000 girls pursuing STEM education, and created economic opportunity programs that helped 8,000 single mothers achieve financial stability. Victoria herself had been featured on the cover of Time magazine, the woman who turned trauma into empire, and had delivered a TED Talk that garnered 12 million views in its first week. She'd also lost the last of her baby weight, not through desperate dieting, but through the simple act of living, chasing toddlers, building an empire, existing fully in her power. Tonight, she wore a custom champagne gown that cost more than Marcus's entire wedding. Her hair was swept up elegantly, diamonds at her throat and ears. She looked like someone who belonged on magazine covers. Because she did. Robert Morrison appeared at her elbow. "The press wants photos, and there's someone here who'd like to speak with you." "Who?" He gestured across the room. Patricia Winters stood near the entrance, looking elegant but nervous. Victoria hadn't seen her since the wedding aftermath, though they'd exchanged occasional emails. Victoria crossed the room, accepting congratulations and handshakes along the way. "Patricia, I'm glad you came." "I almost didn't," Patricia admitted. "But I wanted to tell you something in person. Natasha completed her counseling program. She's working now, nonprofit work with troubled teens. She's different, humbler, maybe even learning." Victoria absorbed this. "I'm glad. She asked me to tell you she's sorry, that she knows you probably don't want to hear it, and she doesn't deserve forgiveness. But she's sorry for what she did." "Tell her," Victoria paused, searching for the right words. "Tell her I accept her apology. But I don't need it. What I needed was accountability, and she gave me that. What she does with the rest of her life is up to her." Patricia nodded, tears forming. "You're kinder than I would be." "I'm not kind. I'm just done carrying anger. It's too heavy." Victoria smiled. "But I am grateful to you. Your courage helped change everything." They talked for a few more minutes, then Patricia excused herself to join her husband. Jennifer Watts approached next, champagne glass in hand. "The mayor wants to meet you. Apparently she's considering a run for governor and wants to discuss policy proposals around women's economic empowerment." "Tell her I'll be right there." Victoria took a breath, then asked the question that had been hovering. "Have you heard anything about Marcus?" Jennifer's expression went carefully neutral. "Do you want to know?" "I think I need to." "He moved to Portland 3 months ago. He's working for a small real estate firm, entry-level position, living in a studio apartment, sending child support when he can, which isn't often. He requested increased visitation last month, but the judge denied it until he completes all his requirements." "How is he doing? Emotionally?" Jennifer shrugged. "His attorney says he's in therapy, trying to understand how he became someone who could do what he did. Whether he's genuine or just trying to reduce his support obligations." She trailed off. Victoria nodded slowly. "And Catherine?" "Convicted on 4 counts. Sentenced to 6 years. Currently serving at a federal facility in Dublin. Harold divorced her immediately after the conviction. She's lost everything: social standing, marriage, freedom." "Good," Victoria said simply. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. "I thought you didn't care about revenge." "I don't care about revenge, but I care deeply about consequences. Catherine orchestrated the abuse of a new mother. She paid someone to destroy a marriage. She deserves prison." "Fair enough." The evening continued in a blur of speeches, donations, and networking. Victoria spoke briefly about the foundation's goals, shared statistics about their impact, and thanked the attendees for their support. But the highlight came near the end of the night, when a video played on the screens around the room. It was testimonials from women the foundation had helped. A woman who'd fled abuse with 3 children and was now in nursing school. A 15-year-old girl who'd received a STEM scholarship and was now designing robotics. A single mother who'd gotten business training and now ran her own successful company. One after another, women told stories of transformation, of finding strength they didn't know they had, of rebuilding lives from ashes. And at the end of each testimonial, they said the same thing. "Thank you, Dr. Chen. You showed me that surviving was possible, that thriving was possible, Thank you." Victoria watched with tears streaming down her face, not caring that 500 people could see her crying. This was why she'd walked into that wedding. This was why she'd exposed the truth publicly. This was why she'd built the foundation. Not for revenge, not even for justice, for this, for transformation, for proof that women could take the worst things done to them and turn them into fuel for change. After the gala ended, Victoria returned to Pacific Heights just after midnight. The house was quiet. Babies asleep, night nurse reading in the dimly lit nursery. Victoria checked on Emma, Grace, and Sophie, kissing each sleeping forehead. They'd grown so much in the past year. Walking now, more like stumbling, starting to talk, developing distinct personalities. Emma was serious and thoughtful. Grace was adventurous and fearless. Sophie was gentle and empathetic. They'd never remember the hospital, never remember the shelter, never remember the chaos of their first weeks of life. But Victoria would tell them someday, would explain that they were born in the middle of a war and their mother fought that war to give them a different future. She returned to her bedroom, the master suite with views of the city, and changed into comfortable pajamas. No designer gown now, just herself. On her nightstand was a framed photo, her grandmother, herself, and her 3 daughters. 4 generations of Chen women. Helen had photoshopped Victoria and the girls into an old photo of her grandmother from the 1980s, creating an impossible but meaningful image. The Chen women don't break. We adapt, we strategize, and we win. Victoria's phone buzzed with a final text of the night. From an unknown number, unknown. I saw the gala coverage on the news. You're doing incredible things. I know I have no right to say this, but I'm proud of what you've built. Not for me. I know I'm not part of your life anymore. But for the girls. They have an amazing mother. Marcus. Victoria stared at the message for a long time. A year ago, receiving this would have made her angry. Would have felt like a manipulation, an attempt to worm his way back into relevance. Now? She felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no connection. He was just someone she used to know. Someone who'd made terrible choices that led to consequences he was still living with. She didn't respond, simply deleted the message and blocked the number. Some doors, once closed, didn't need to be reopened. She climbed into bed and pulled up her tablet, reviewing her schedule for tomorrow. 8 a.m. Pentagon briefing on Phase 2 implementation, 11 a.m. Foundation Board meeting, 2 p.m. Interview with Stanford students about careers in defense technology, 5 p.m. Dinner with the girls. Emma's favorite, mac and cheese. A full day, a busy day. The kind of day that would have been impossible a year ago when she'd been drowning in survival mode. But now she was thriving. Before turning off the light, Victoria opened the video file she kept on her tablet. Her grandmother's 3rd message, the one recorded for 5 years from now. But tonight felt like the right time to watch it. Her grandmother appeared on screen, looking healthier than in either of the previous videos. This one must have been recorded years before her death, when she was still relatively well. Victoria, her grandmother began in Mandarin, then switched to English as always. If you're watching this before the 5-year mark, you're impatient. But that's okay. The Chen women were never good at waiting. She smiled, that fierce smile Victoria remembered from childhood. I hope you've built something by now. I hope you've taken the fortune I left you and turned it into something meaningful. But more than that, I hope you've found happiness. Her grandmother's voice softened. Happiness isn't optional, Victoria. It's not selfish or frivolous or something you pursue after the work is done. It's the point of everything. You survived something terrible. You fought back. You won. But if you're not happy, then what was it all for? Victoria felt tears forming. So my final advice to you, my brilliant, powerful, stubborn granddaughter, let yourself be happy. Date when you're ready. Laugh with your daughters. Take vacations. Eat dessert first sometimes. Dance in your kitchen at midnight. Be the whole, complete person you deserve to be. Not just the warrior. Not just the mogul. Not just the mother. All of it. Everything. Her grandmother leaned forward. The Chen women survive. But we also live. And I want you to live so fully, so vibrantly, so joyfully that when you're my age, you look back with no regrets. I love you, Victoria. Now go be happy. That's an order. The video ended. Victoria sat in bed, tears streaming down her face, and laughed. Okay, Nai, she whispered to the empty room. I'll try. She set the tablet aside, turned off the light, and lay in the darkness thinking about happiness. About building an empire and raising her daughters and changing the world. About the fact that Marcus's cruelty had inadvertently freed her to become someone more powerful than she'd ever imagined. About the irony that his attempt to destroy her had actually given her wings. As she drifted toward sleep, Victoria Chen Blackwood, billionaire heiress, defense technology pioneer, single mother of triplets, founder of a foundation that would help millions of women, allowed herself to acknowledge something she'd been too busy to feel. She was happy. Genuinely, deeply, impossibly happy, not despite what Marcus had done, but because of what she'd built from the ashes of it. The Chen women don't break. They build empires. And Victoria had just gotten started.